It's an honor to be here and take part with this task force, and a big thank you to Director Barnes and Director Hunsaker-Meyer for coming out to the mountains and
Our pleasure.
being with us. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for Eagle County, and I'm also honored to serve as a governor appointee to the Colorado Board of Veteran Affairs. On that board, I represent about 50,000 veterans who live on the Western Slope. Along with that, I work on the board of the Western Slope Veterans Coalition out of Glenwood. That was put together to pull resources for Pitkin, Garfield, and Eagle County for veterans. And I also serve on the advisory board for the new Western Region One Source in Grand Junction, which is off to a fabulous start. I mention my affiliations only to share with you my background and my experience, which allows me to speak for the behavior issues and concerns of veterans and their families here in Eagle County and the Western Slope. The concerns here have many unique aspects that are different from those of urban areas in the state. Working daily with professionals, nonprofits, and government agencies to accomplish outreach and provide care and assistance to our veterans, we find three overarching issues which compound each other and which lead to complex and difficult behavioral health problems. They are isolation, housing, and substance abuse. Granted, all three issues can be found in urban centers, but the issues here have very different, unique aspects. Isolation can happen anywhere. But Western Slope towns and neighborhoods can be separated by miles of open country and miles of mountain passes. And both areas can have very difficult transportation issues. Veterans sometimes must travel 3 to 4 hours to get to VA health care, and even 2 to 3 hours just to get to community care. The rural community care rarely, if ever, includes behavioral health professionals. Socialization and community time is crucial for veterans and their families, and these isolation and transportation challenges only exacerbate these issues. Housing First is a recognized proactive concept that's practiced nationally, and a lack of adequate housing is certainly a huge issue here on the Western Slope, including in our mountain communities. This issue overlaps with isolation when you have folks living in primitive situations removed from town. Even when we have HUD-VASH vouchers when we can get them, the programs designed to assist veterans with housing cannot even find housing to put them in. Substandard housing, whether it is isolated and primitive or crowded with a lack of privacy, can often lead to behavior problems. Substance abuse is sometimes a result of the two aforementioned issues, isolation and housing, but it can also just be a factor of location and our I-70 corridor that contributes to this problem. Substance abuse is a major issue in our communities, and especially in parts of the veteran community. When these three main challenges are in play, we hit on our fourth major issue, and that is the lack of access to professional behavioral health providers. It is a challenge due to isolated living areas, lack of transportation, and basically the lack of providers. The Veterans Administration is attempting to deal with depression, anxiety, PTSD, domestic violence, substance abuse, and suicide rates, all of which are very, very high in the Western Slope. Attempts are being made to integrate telehealth, traveling clinics, new approaches to treatment, and increased outreach. However, to those of us on the ground, it's not happening fast enough, and it's taking way too long. The Mission Act has provided for more possibilities of community care for veterans that live more than 40 miles from a VA hospital. But if the community does not have adequate numbers of trained professionals and acute care facilities for behavior health, then we're still in trouble. Often the veteran ends up in the county jail, and I have to say that I am so appreciative of our county law enforcement and jail people because they are acting as our mental health facility many times. And the jail is not an appropriate place for them, and it only makes the situation worse. I doubt that any of this is very new information for all of you, but I hope that perhaps I've been able to lay out some emphasis on the issues specifically for veterans. Quite frankly, in the face of these difficult times, the small town efforts at socialization opportunities, neighbors being educated on suicide prevention and drug issues, outreach to families to prevent and handle domestic violence, and education on the challenges of behavioral health that we have seen the beginnings of here in Eagle County are perhaps the very best thing at this time. In closing, I would just like to add that the percentages of veterans that have these severe problems is small, but every single one of them counts and every single one of them is important. However, you do have a huge population of very settled, stable veterans like myself who are your neighbors that live down the street from you. And by population, by percentage, veterans spend more time and more funds with nonprofits and philanthropic organizations than the rest of the population. So the rest of the veterans are there to help their brothers and sisters, and whatever programs you put out, please reach out to those veterans as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for all your public service.
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't realize all the boards you were on.
She's a Board of Health member.
I know.